enough for us on the show over the years. Sharona is the host of Back Talk with Sharona. So, Sharona, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
We're doing okay. So, obviously week 1 of the NFL season is coming up, and everybody in their own little camp, who whatever team they follow, is going to be must-see. But generally speaking, what games are in week 1 are must-sees for you?
Oh, there's a lot of great games out there. Obviously, it's kind of interesting. The Thursday night game really, and by the time you play this, it will have been concluded. But it's not getting as much hype as what you would expect, and even the two teams don't, really seem to be all that excited about it. And of course, it's a rematch of Super Bowl 50, and it's just weird. Obviously, for reasons that are pretty clear, I'm interested in the Minnesota-Tennessee game. I think that's going to be a great matchup. It's really going to, I think, tell us a lot about those two teams. Bills-Ravens, I'm really interested in that game. I want to see how the Bills look. They have had a lot. They were a team that I was high on going into the off season. They've had a lot of injuries, but they've also, picked up some players too. I think that's going to be a good game. Bengals Jets, I think that's going to be a really good game to watch. Dolphins Seahawks. Are the Dolphins for real? It's hard for me to buy into them. I'm interested to see what the Seahawks look like in the regular season. Giants Cowboys, it's always a good that's a rivalry, always a good conference, division matchup. Let's see what else. And then of course Patriots Cardinals, I guess, would be the other one that I'm really interested in.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting matchup for nationally, because the Cardinals and Patriots are both expected to be good, but there's no Tom Brady, so it'll be interesting to see if or the Patriots actually lose that game. So, a team that has moved, the Rams. Jared Goff is inactive for week 1. Is this really a blow for the Rams, or are they just handling a rookie correctly in that he shouldn't be starting the first game of his first season? Or, on the opposite side of that, is it really just Todd Gurley's team for the next several years, and he is the difference between the team winning or losing?
Well, I think all of that's true. Certainly Todd Gurley is the best, certainly the best offensive player that they have. Jared Goff did not look ready. He looked awful, actually, during the preseason. I think it's the correct decision not to play him, making him inactive. Okay, fine, whatever. Their quarterback situation is interesting. Jeff Fisher just got, didn't he just get extended? How he manages.
He did.
How he managed. We should all be Sam Bradford and Jeff Fisher in our next life. That's all I
That's right.
So, I expect the Rams to do. The Rams are going to ram. That if they'll be 8-8, maybe, maybe 6-10. They're not going to be very good, in my opinion. I'm not. I don't even know that I'll watch that game. Is that the Monday night game? No, what game is that? That's it's one of the Monday night games. You know what? I might actually watch it because I am interested in the 49ers.
And again, we are speaking with the fabulous Sharona. A little more in-game talk. Kickers, a lot of kickers have said we're going to see a lot of mortar kicks. The high kicks, a lot of hang time in response to the touchback move. Now it's going to be at the 25. How do you see this playing out?
They've been moving away from making the special teams have been traditionally, kind of like the third aspect of the game, and that's been changing. They've made a lot of moves in terms of the extra point and all of that. And so I think teams have kind of gone away from, really relying on, the return game as a huge aspect of the game. What impact it's going to have, for the teams that, maybe have relied on using their return game to get them in better position for their offense to, to do well. I mean, it might, and I can't call any team like that. Well, maybe Seattle. I mean, Tyler Lockett is the guy that comes to my mind when I think of great return ability, and
right,
at this point. But I don't think it's going to have a huge impact, in my opinion. I just don't. I don't see it.
And a little more in your neighborhood, the Titans. They seem to be improving. They're still not picked to win even half the games by a lot of the pundits. How's the city of Nashville reacting to this year's squad, and how good can they be in 2 or 3 years?
Well, I think that they're better. I think we've seen indication. I don't pay much attention to pundits, so I'm actually not sure what. I mean, I know that I play a lot of fantasy football, and I know that for a pretty good while you could get a lot of their players on the cheap, and as the preseason progressed, that became less and less true. So, I think people are cluing into the fact that, hey, their offense might be pretty good. The defense is, to me, the bigger concern. I think the front seven is going to be fine. The secondary is still very much a work in progress. I predicted them to win at least 6 games. I think they'll win, around 6 games. If they go 8-8, I think that that's a great season for them because the last couple of years they've won, 2 and then 3 games. It's not been very good in terms of what I think people are cautiously optimistic. They looked good in the preseason. They made a lot of changes. It's a new regime. I think most people like, as a general rule, like what John Robinson, the new general manager, has done. Not quite as sold as, not saying me personally, but the fan base is not quite sold on Mike Mularkey. They weren't terribly excited about that. He hasn't had a lot of success. I'm probably one of the few that like him, more than most people. But I think that they are cautiously optimistic, and and if they can, and I know it sounds weird, 6 games, wow, but I mean that's a lot for this team when you look at the past couple of years.
So am I the only one old enough here to think when I hear the name John Robinson being the general manager of the Titans that, oh, that's the guy who used to coach USC football, right? So anyway, he's not. But, yeah, that's what I think every time I hear that one on sports talk radio shows. So we don't like to use the word elite on this show a lot because Todd and I, and Ted's wife doesn't even rank him in the top 5 of anything. But Todd and I have never been in that category in anything we do, but who do you see as the best 5 or 6 best quarterbacks in the NFL to start this season?
Aaron Rodgers, to me, is the best quarterback in the league right now. It's in terms of pure quarterbacking, the purely playing the position. Cam Newton is just an unstoppable force. Tom Brady, you have to put Tom Brady, even though he's suspended for the first 4 games. Russell Wilson, I think, is easily in the top 10, if not the top 5. How many is that? How many have I given you? 4? Let me think here. I think Carson Palmer is a very, very good quarterback. Would I put him in the top 5? Probably not. He'd make my top 10. The concern, obviously, with him is whether or not he can stay healthy. Ben Roethlisberger, he's a solid quarterback, a guy who's going to always going to give full effort, and with him behind center, you're always going to have a chance. Andrew Luck would probably be my 5th one, except I'm hesitant because he had such a bad year, and he's back on the injury report. Drew Brees, I guess Drew Brees would be the 5. I'm kind of scrolling down real quick. I guess Drew Brees would be my 5th, and then Andrew Luck. I think you have to put him in there. RG3 looks good. He'd probably make he'd be around 10 for me, 10 or 11, I guess. I like Alex Smith. I think that he gets a lot of criticism, unwarranted. Tony Romo's an interesting guy. He's not going to be playing, at least early on. How bad is his back? It sounds to me like it's pretty bad. If I were Tony Romo's wife, I would be like, baby, might be time to be thinking about, because you want him to play with his kids and stuff. I don't know. Well, Eli Manning would not probably make my top 10. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because Tony Romo, a lot of people like to give him a hard time, but he's really the difference in that team making the playoffs or not. I mean, he's a good quarterback.
Has been. Yes,
Yeah,
he has been. And, you had to like what you saw out of Dak Prescott, and I saw a lot of Dak Prescott in college, in the SEC, and I was always a fan, and I really liked his game, and, I'm happy for him. I think that he's landed in a great spot, and he's going to get a prime opportunity to, to shine. They've got a great offensive line. They should have a pretty good running game. They've got some good wide receivers. I'm interested to see him this year.
Yeah, if he does well enough, it could be that we don't ever really see Romo as a starter again, just because of his health, not because of his ability.
Exactly.
So are there some dark horse teams that, well, maybe even the Titans, if they get the running game, because they have good running backs, but are there some dark horse teams that you see possibly getting to the playoffs this year?
Well, I think you have to look to the AFC South for your dark teams. And, and maybe, I don't know, maybe the AFC, the AFC in general, I think, because it's been a little bit more down in terms of overall strength. I'm curious to see if the Jaguars can finally, with Gus Bradley, finally get over that hump and be the team that, it looked like they could be for the last couple of years. There are no excuses left in Jacksonville. It is their year to compete for the AFC South. I think that they'll probably be competing with Houston. I'm not excited about what the Colts did over the off season and, with the way they looked last year. I just, it's hard for me to believe in them this year. I think I mentioned the Bills. I really like what the Bills, what they have done. I've got the standings pulled up. So I just made my NFL predictions. I mentioned the Bills. I picked the Chiefs to win the AFC West. That may surprise a lot of people. I like what the Raiders are doing. I just still think they're another year away. I did not predict them to be a wild card. Some people did, and I think they've got a fantastic young quarterback. And I think that they look good, but so far the Chargers are awful. And the AFC North, I picked the Steelers. The Browns may be a surprise team. I really like what RG3 looks like. Hugh Jackson's a great coach, and he's going to coach that team up. And I would put them on the list. I don't know if you would say they're a surprise because they're getting a little bit of hype. Talked about the AFC South. I don't think the Giants are going to do anything. The Eagles, they're not. I picked the Redskins to win the NFC East. I don't know if that's a surprise or not. The NFC West, that's the Cardinals to lose. I'm sorry, Seahawk fans. I picked you as a wild card. NFC North, that's the Packers. And I picked the Vikings even though they lost their quarterback. I just love Mike Zimmer. I love him, Coach Zim, team Coach Zim. I think he will coach them up. I think that despite losing Teddy Bridgewater, and his injury is extremely concerning to me, I think that they'll still be a good team. We'll know more about that this weekend when they play Tennessee. And let's see, in the NFC South, I think it's the Panthers. I picked the Panthers to win the Super Bowl.
I was looking for the mute button when you had Cardinals win the NFC West. I was like, "Where's the mute?" I'm just kidding. So, beyond football, what do you think about Colin Kaepernick not standing for the national? Not only him, but Jeremy Lane, for instance, of the Seahawks, and possibly more Seahawks in that first game, not standing for the national anthem.
Well, I think that Colin Kaepernick's journey is fascinating to me, and if you had been paying attention to his social media presence, you knew that he was becoming more socially conscious. Now, I don't always agree with Colin Kaepernick. Don't get me wrong. I mean, some of the things I've been like, dude, but he's definitely right in that we are living in a time where there's a lot of evidence that the words liberty and justice for all are hollow and meaningless. And I don't think that there is liberty and justice for all. And I think it's important that we as humans and as Americans stand up and talk about these things, because if we don't, things will never change. And if you have a platform like Colin Kaepernick, what good is it if you don't use it to bring awareness, to do good? Dead men can't speak. And, the dead bodies laying in the streets, they can't speak. And so I admire, I applaud what Colin Kaepernick and these other men and women are doing. And if you talk to the overwhelming majority of service members that I've spoken with, have been supportive of it.
Well, Sharona, I was going to hang up on you since you totally dissed my Miami Dolphins, and you clearly think Ryan Tannehill is like the 37th best quarterback in the league. But
I'm not sold on Ryan Tannehill. I think this is a big year for him. If he does not show that he is, he had a hard hill to climb. He was overdrafted, right, in my opinion. But this is his year. He's got to show it this year.
Oh, I agree. He's got what is reputed to be an excellent offensive coach, and he's being tutored by a couple guys who know how to play the position, Manning and Marino. So, yeah, if he doesn't do it this year, he needs to be toast. Moving on to football, and by the way, love your answer on Kaepernick. You talked about some of the dark horses. 4 teams. Who are the 4 teams that have the best chance to make the Super Bowl, and who's going to win the big? Oh, I said Super Bowl. Doggone it! Now we're all within money. Who's going to win the big game?
I picked Carolina to mow through the NFC. I just think they made mistakes in the Super Bowl. They did not seem to be prepared for the blitz that is, chose that word deliberately. The Denver defense, that was one of the best defenses I've ever seen, and they did not seem to be prepared for it. It seemed to kind of take them off their game, but I still like them as a team. They get Kelvin Benjamin back. Devin Funchess has got a year under his belt. They've got a lot of nice young talent on that football team. If I were concerned about anything, it would probably be their run game. I love Jonathan Stewart. Can he stay healthy? Who's behind him? I know they have Mike Talbert. Beyond in the NFC, beyond that, Green Bay is always going to give you your money's worth and then some. I love Arizona. If Carson Palmer can stay healthy, Uncle Bruce is a fantastic coach. They've got so much talent on that team. I came very close to picking Arizona in the NFC, and then I guess Seattle would be the other team. In the AFC, it's the Patriots. It's the Patriots to win or lose, I guess. Although I really like, I like the Chiefs. I like Pittsburgh this year. I think Pittsburgh is a good team. Now, certainly the loss of Martavius Bryant and not being without Le'Veon Bell for a couple of games, 3 games, I think is what his suspension ended up being. That certainly hurts. You don't lose a player like that, but they're still loaded, and I think D'Angelo Williams will man that spot quite well. I'm so curious to see what the Bills and Jets do. I really, I love the Jets coach. Can Ryan Fitzpatrick put together two good years in a row? That's right. Certainly a concern, but their defense is so good, and they've got some nice young talent too. I mentioned the Chiefs. The Steelers we talked about. The AFC South is the wild card, right? I don't see any team coming out of the AFC South this year and making too much noise. But, maybe in a couple of years.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions there. And, again, thank you for not mentioning the Miami Dolphins. You mentioned the entire division. And actually, I feel about the same as you do about the Dolphins. I'm not at all sure. Moving on to college, and the only team in college football that matters, the Tennessee Vols. The fans, they're kind of like the mayor in The Nightmare Before Christmas. They're full of hope and joy 1 minute, and then they switch to the other face, and then they're depressed because, we barely squeaked out against Appy State. So what are your hopes for the Vols this year? Oh, go ahead.
No, this coaching staff makes us schizophrenic because of what they do, and Tennessee, and they should have been hyped up. I'm sorry if you're upset about that. They've got a lot of talent on that team.
Yes, they do.
But they've had talent before, and the reason why they have not performed better, in my opinion, is coaching. And I was prepared to drink all the orange Kool-Aid in the world, and then we get to last Thursday night, and the team just was utterly unprepared. Just completely and utterly unprepared and not ready to face Appy State. And maybe they just didn't game plan for it. And there were reports that they played, everything was vanilla. They played vanilla and they were preparing for. I'm sorry. That's not, to me, that's not a successful formula.
That's what I'm going to ask you.
You play the game in front of you, and you don't look ahead. And if you talk to him, I bet you Bill Belichick would never do that. He would never overlook an opponent. Ever.
You can't. And that was a lot of talk, was that it was, they had a vanilla game plan because they're looking ahead. And like you said, you cannot look ahead against anybody, especially against a team that was, 11-2.
Then they came out yesterday and said, oh, well, we're going to run this new fangled, exotic, no-huddle defense. And I was like, guys, it doesn't work that way. So I don't know. It's just, I'm going to go into the rest of the season with zero expectations and just let the chips fall where they may.
Well, that was my question. What are your hopes for the season? And apparently you think that they definitely were overrated to start off at number 9.
I was happy to see them getting accolades and with everybody being excited about the season and the possibilities. I just, I'm still not sold.
Gotcha. So you're not, you don't want to make any predictions about if they can take the East?
They should compete in the East. If they can't take the East this year, Butch Jones needs to be on the hot seat.
Wow, that's awesome. That's an awesome take. Because I was thinking, I understand there's a whole lot of hype going into the season, and the team, as you mentioned, has tons of talent. And I know that they said, after the fact, we're kind of being vanilla, or people have said they're being vanilla, but they came out flat.
That's awful.
And it's the first game of the season.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how you can undersell that. They did not look prepared. They didn't look like a team that was ready for the season to start. They certainly didn't look worthy of being the number 9 team in the nation.
And
sorry, Todd, but you mentioned that Bill Belichick, who's an NFL coach, but even going back to college, does Nick Saban win this game 20-13? Does Urban Meyer win this game 20-13?
No.
Right.
No. Dabo Swinney doesn't win this game 20-13 in overtime.
Yeah, and I hate to agree, but that's not that I hate to agree with you guys, but that's wish Bush Jones all the best, but that's something that comes back time and again to him is the in-game coaching. It's like there are some games where you have to wonder. So hopefully this was a hiccup. Yeah, fingers and toes crossed. But my gosh, we'll know a lot more when they're going up against Virginia Tech. But that was a huge drop. No other team that won had nearly as big a drop. To drop from 9th to 17th in the rankings. They take care of business. It doesn't matter if they're 17th. They'll be where they need to be. But wow.
Yeah, preseason polls are worthless, and really we won't have a good idea what's going on in college football until week 4. But they deserve to drop, and I don't pay a lot of attention to polls anyway. But yeah, they deserve to drop, and now maybe they can they'll come out like a team that's ready to dominate.
Yeah, hopefully they'll come out this time like they in the Battle of Bristol like they should have last week.
Yeah.
Sharona, you were fantastic as always.
Thank you.
Tell our listeners where you can be found and why they should listen to you and how they can listen and all those good things.
Well, the best way to keep up with me is to follow me on Twitter at Sports by Sharona. You can check out my podcast, That Talk with Sharona, and I'm writing this year for Inside the Pylon. I had a couple of articles